In the beginning of the story, we see a man named David who arrives in his town by ferry and begins his journey to his hometown. He goes home and calls his daughter Masha, but when she doesn't respond despite his repeated calls, David goes upstairs and finds that Masha has taken her own life by cutting her wrists in the bathtub. Although she had killed herself, there were marks of severe beating on her face. There were also some unknown people, and we do not know where they came from. After having this horrific dream again, David wakes up in fear and sees Masha's spirit in front of him. It's been 4 months since Masha's death. Years had passed, but David had not been able to recover from his daughter's death, so he began attending grief relief groups. These are groups where people often gather to clear their minds by talking to each other, people who have lost someone close or a loved one and are unable to recover from their loss. David starts sharing everything about the incident with the group, and we learn that a month after Masha's death, David's wife, Michelle, also left him. David had even brought a Ouija board into the house because he felt that Masha's soul was still there, but he hadn't used it yet. Dr. Derek advises him to leave all this behind and move on, but David knows it's not that easy for him. In the group, we see 4 strange women who, after listening to David, start smiling and giggling at each other. It's such a sensitive topic, but who laughs? Later, when David is on his way home, these women approach him. While talking to him, they tell him that Masha's spirit wants to communicate with him. David had never mentioned his daughter's name to anyone, so he was shocked to hear them know it. All 4 women invite David to their place so they can communicate with Masha's spirit. But David refuses, as he doesn't believe in it yet, and he heads home. Once home, he recalls the day he discovered Masha's death. When Michelle came home from work sometime later, she thought David was packing his things to leave. David had been so busy that he didn't pay attention to Masha, and that's why she took her own life. He was sure that she must have been carrying some deep pain or sorrow in her heart. After remembering everything, David became very upset in the present. He looked at an old family photo next to the Ouija board, and suddenly, he heard a noise from upstairs. At the same time, he felt sharp pain in his pinky finger. He went upstairs, and as viewers, we could see Masha's spirit moving in her room. David went into Masha's room and looked through her belongings. Among her things, he found some personal items, including Masha's private diary. In the diary, Masha had drawn an image of a crying girl, and there was also a photograph of Masha with 4 other girls, but the girls' faces had been scratched out. David didn't recognize any of them. He brought the diary downstairs, and we could see Masha's spirit silently following him. When David sat down to read the diary, he discovered that Masha had written about strange and weird things happening to her. She couldn't understand why these things were happening, nor could she explain them to anyone. Even as David was reading, Masha's spirit was watching him closely. From what we know so far, whatever was happening to Masha had made her so depressed that she decided to take her own life. That night, when David went to sleep, he had another nightmare about Masha. When he woke up, he saw her spirit moving toward him with a diary, but when he looked again, nothing was there. The next day at the office, David continued reading Masha's diary. In it, he found the phone number of one of Masha's friends named Casey. David called her to ask about Masha and arranged to meet her. When David met Casey, we learned from her that Masha didn't talk much to anyone and had been troubled by many things. Masha had wanted to open up, but she couldn't talk about her problems. David showed Casey the photo from Masha's diary, but Casey didn't recognize any of the 4 people in it. Later, when David went to his grief support group, we learned that he deeply wished to wake up one day with Masha still alive, as he felt very guilty for not being a good father. Even in his dreams, he saw Masha driving, which frightened him, and he didn't want that to keep happening. He had been having these scary dreams for a long time. That day, the 4 strange women who had appeared in the group earlier came back. They smiled strangely at David, and when he was leaving, they approached him again. They made the same offer to him, saying that even if David didn't want to come with them today, they were ready to come to his house. According to her, she just wanted to help David. As the ladies were leaving, David asked if they needed his address to come to his house. The 4 ladies replied that they didn't need his address, which seemed odd. When David got home, he was thinking about Masha as usual. Suddenly, the 4 ladies appeared outside his house. It was strange because it seemed like they had magically appeared, with smoke swirling around them. When they entered, they all seemed uncomfortable, as if someone was shouting loudly, but David didn't hear anything. One of the ladies saw Masha's diary on the table and went toward it. David tried to stop her, but she went ahead to grab something. At that moment, Michelle came home and saw the 4 women. She thought something strange was going on and decided to leave, but David went outside and told her everything. He explained what was happening and why he had invited the women there. Michelle didn't believe him, but she told David to take care of himself and left. When David came back inside, the ladies told him that he needed to come to their house, as it was the only place where they could contact Masha's spirit. They said Masha wanted to talk to him about things he had never done, which had upset her. At first, David hesitated, but when they asked him to think more about Masha, he finally agreed to go. They also told David to bring Masha's clothes and diary. The strangest part was when David asked for their address, and they told him that he would know how to reach them when he was completely ready. After they left, David became very frustrated. In anger, he tore up Masha's entire diary. Later, when he went to sleep, he had the same dream where he heard Masha's voice. When he went to the living room in the dream, he saw Masha sitting there, screaming loudly. David woke up suddenly, feeling unsettled. He then heard strange noises coming from Masha's room and started to feel pain in his hand, just like the pain in his finger earlier. When he went upstairs, he saw Masha changing her clothes, and then Masha's spirit began ringing something. Masha's spirit came in front of David, and he woke up in fear once again, realizing that he had been having a dream within a dream. David was very frightened by this experience. The next day, when he went to the office, he woke up there too, as he had been lost in thoughts about Masha. He saw 3 red, lifeless men below the office, wearing large costumes that hid their faces. Then, David got a call from Cassie. She told him that ever since their conversation about Masha, she had been having strange dreams. She also remembered that Masha used to attend a self-help group to talk about the things troubling her. Suddenly, the call was disconnected. Cassie went to her living room and saw the same 3 men in those strange costumes standing there, just like the ones David had seen. Later that night, while David was thinking about Masha, a red light appeared on the Ouija board on his table. One of the 4 women from earlier came in, her face covered by a red transparent cloth with a strange symbol tattooed on her forehead. She was completely naked. She asked David to lift the Ouija board's planchette, and when he did, he found himself in a room with the other 3 women. They, too, were wearing red transparent cloths over their faces, but unlike the first woman, they were fully clothed. The women were performing a ritual to bring Masha's spirit back from the world of the dead into the living world. They were using magic to call her spirit. The woman asked David for something of Masha's, either her clothes or her diary. David handed her the torn diary and Masha's underwear, which felt strange and uncomfortable to him. As soon as she took the items, she began a ritual, chanting and asking for Masha's spirit to come from the sky. As the ritual progressed, David started seeing brief glimpses of Masha's death. The women began to suffer from intense headaches, screaming in pain, and eventually fell unconscious. David tried to wake them up, but when they didn't respond, he picked up Masha's diary and underwear. Suddenly, the diary transformed into the photograph David had found among Masha's belongings. This time, the faces in the photo were clear, and it became apparent that the 4 girls in the picture were the same 4 women who now lay unconscious in front of David. When David got home, he was scared and called Michelle. He couldn't tell if what had just happened was real or another dream. David told her about the strange dream and the Ouija board, which shocked Michelle. She thought David's mental health was getting worse because of Masha's death. She tried to comfort him at first, but when David leaned in to kiss her, Michelle pulled away and left. She was always willing to support David, but she couldn't live with him anymore or continue their relationship after everything that had happened. David went to sleep again, and this time he had a dream where both Masha and Michelle appeared. In the dream, Michelle was sitting and laughing like a doll, while Masha whispered something in David's ear that made Michelle furious. Then, David had another dream where he saw a string tied to his hand, causing him pain. The string led toward Masha's room. When he entered the room, he saw Masha lying in the bathroom, just as she had been when she died. Masha asked David to bring back her diary. David was confused, and when he didn't respond, Masha screamed at him. David woke up suddenly. When David went outside, he saw the same 3 men in red robes standing around, who seemed like they were part of a cult. The next day, exhausted from lack of sleep, David went to work. While working with the lights off, his boss came in and told him that 4 women were outside asking about him. His boss didn't realize David was there because the lights were off, so he sent the women away. David realized that the women must have been the same strange ladies from the ritual. He rushed outside but didn't find anyone, leaving him deep in thought. David then went to the basement where his grief support group used to meet. Before going there, he had called Michelle and tried to talk about fixing things between them. Deep down, David knew he still loved her, but Michelle believed that David was responsible for Masha's suicide. By now, it was night, and the basement was empty. David decided to perform the same ritual the four women had done. He lit a lamp and began reciting the same lines they had chanted during the ritual. As he did this, David experienced intense pain in his head and collapsed, falling unconscious. David opened his eyes and heard Masha's voice from outside. This was exactly what he had wished for, to see his daughter when he woke up. When he went outside, he found Masha there. She told him that she had fallen from the sky and walked to reach him. David didn't think much about how or why she was there and immediately brought her inside. Since Masha looked a little dirty, David took her to the basement bathroom to give her a bath. While she was changing clothes, something strange happened. David was watching her. Later, when Masha came out, David mentioned taking her to Michelle's house, but Masha didn't seem to agree with the idea. At that moment, David noticed hooded cult-like figures standing outside the building. Ignoring them, he took Masha to the dining area to give her something to eat. He made her some jam bread and, while talking, mentioned that people thought she was dead. This made Masha act strangely, and she repeatedly asked about Michelle. Concerned, David stepped aside to call Michelle and asked him to come over quickly. David referred to her as Masha during the call and told Michelle that she was alive, but Michelle didn't believe him. Suddenly, Michelle began laughing in a strange, demonic tone over the phone. Meanwhile, outside, the hooded figures were seen slowly entering the building. When David returned to Masha, she started asking if she had been a good daughter or a naughty little girl. David replied that she had been good. Then she asked if he had been a good father. David hesitated, but eventually said yes. Masha then directly questioned him, asking why, if he had been a good father, he had committed suicide. David avoided answering and decided to take Masha home. On their way, Masha began speaking strangely. Her words revealed something disturbing. David was not the man he appeared to be. He had a twisted mind and had sexually abused Masha, which deeply troubled her. She had been too scared and ashamed to tell anyone. Though David denied it, hints of this dark truth had been present all along. For instance, David had kept only Masha's undergarments, seen her in his dreams, and even watched her changing clothes earlier. These were things no father would ever do. Masha's behavior and words made it clear that her pain and suffering had always been rooted in David's actions, though he refused to accept the horrifying truth. Masha once told Cassie that she wanted to share what was happening to her, but felt she couldn't. In a dream, David saw his wife, Michelle, sitting like a puppet while their daughter whispered something in her ear. This seemed to suggest Masha was trying to tell Michelle that her father had assaulted her, but Michelle didn't believe her and shouted at her instead. David's pain in his fingers and hands hinted that Masha had resisted him. She might have even tried to hurt him in self-defense, possibly hitting him, which explained his physical discomfort. In the present moment, David ignored Masha and started taking her outside, but the men in red clothes were still standing there. Confused by their presence, David didn't know who they were. At that moment, Masha freed her hand from David's grip and said she wanted to play a game. She ran back inside the building and began shouting for David to find her. David frantically searched for her and Masha taunted him. Suddenly, she hit David on the head with a glass bottle from behind and ran away. Dazed, David went outside towards the men in red. In anger, he tore off the robe of one of them, only to discover something terrifying. They weren't human but monstrous demons. Horrified, David ran back inside, as if he had stepped into a demonic realm during some ritual. Inside, Masha kept shouting for David to find her. When he didn't respond, she started looking for him instead. When she finally appeared before him, she was holding a knife. Without hesitation, she stabbed David, determined to end his life so he couldn't harm anyone else. She slashed his stomach, but David kicked her in the face and ran to hide in a restroom. Masha chased after him. David stayed quiet, hoping she would leave. When he thought she was gone, he tried to open the door and step outside. But Masha was waiting for him. She attacked him again, and David punched her in the face. Both of them fell to the ground. Masha suddenly began crying, and her words revealed a shocking truth. She wasn't Masha. She was someone Masha had sent to take revenge on David. Masha, tormented by David's actions, had ended her own life. Now, This being had come to ensure David paid for his deeds. After revealing the truth, she pounced on David and killed him. David was desperately trying to escape as the demonic figure bit his neck with her teeth. Despite his pain, he managed to grab a knife lying nearby and stabbed Masha. Her body stopped moving, and David thought it was over. Just as he was about to leave, a group of hooded men and the 4 women Masha had spoken to earlier appeared. They surrounded him, having come after Masha's death. It became clear that these women, who worshipped the Kano demon, had promised Masha that they would avenge her and punish David for his deeds. The most shocking revelation was that after the ritual with the spirit board earlier, David seemed to have entered a trance-like state. Everything he experienced wasn't entirely real. It was happening in a spiritual realm, somewhere between heaven and hell. This otherworldly place was where Masha was exacting her revenge on him. The Kano demon, worshipped by the witches, seemed to have granted Masha's spirit the power to punish David. Masha may have told the witches about the abuse she suffered, and in exchange, they promised to bring her back to life. This explained how Masha's spirit returned, and why Michelle's voice had turned demonic earlier. The witches then held David down, and one of them removed her clothes. She approached David and bit into his stomach, creating a huge hole. From that wound, something began to emerge. It was Masha herself. This horrifying moment revealed that Masha's spirit had completely taken over David's body. She had been reborn, using David as a vessel to return to the world. The witches, known for their ability to disguise themselves and manipulate spirits, crowned Masha with a symbol of their cult. As Masha stood there, she declared, "I am here, fallen from the sky," implying the Kano demon had granted her life anew. Now, she was part of the witches' circle, empowered by the demonic forces. With this, the cult's plan came to fruition, and the story concluded with Masha reborn, ready to carry forward the legacy of the Kano demon.
As you call my name, but shadows follow me, oh, I'm not the same. A fragile soul torn and broken wide, now lost to the night where demons hide. Your love was a light, but it couldn't reach me. Pulled beneath where monsters feast freely. But I'm here, Dad, I'm whispering low. The cult offers a way, but where will you go? Save me, Daddy, from the shadows and flames that haunt me under. I'm drowning in chains. I'm just a memory flickering slow, but don't let the cult steal what you know. I see you standing on the edge of pain. One step closer, you'll fall in vain. I'm trapped in this world far from your light, but your choice can make it alright. In the black of the night, the cult whispers sweet, but every deal they offer is full of deceit. If you choose them, what will you become? A shadow, lost like me, undone. Save me, Daddy, from the shadows and flames that haunt me under. I'm drowning in chains. I'm just a memory flickering slow, but don't let the cult steal what you know. Save me, Daddy, from the shadows and flames that haunt me under. I'm drowning in chains. I'm just a memory flickering slow, but don't let the cult steal what you know. The pull, but it's not too late, Dad. Don't sacrifice your soul to fate. The cult promises life, but it's all a lie. They'll take us both and leave you dry. I'm gone, yes, but not truly lost. Don't give them your heart, no matter the cost. I'm calling to you from a place beyond. Hold on to love and we'll stay strong. Save me, Daddy, from the shadows and flames that haunt me under. I'm drowning in chains. I'm just a memory flickering slow, but don't let the cult steal what you know. I see you fading now, my voice grows weak, but through the darkness, your strength I seek. Remember me, but keep your soul. Don't let the cult take control. Whispers in the dark, don't lose your heart. In the black of the night, the cult whispers sweet, but every deal they offer is full of deceit. If you choose them, what will you become? A shadow, lost like me, undone. Save me, Daddy, from the shadows and flames